It's Monday, and that can only mean one thing. It's time I tell you what we learned from the opening weekend in the Championship. Oh, we're back. If you do find value from this episode, please make sure you leave a like and subscribe. We're on the road to 10,000 subscribers, and I'm just so excited the season is back. Hopefully you are too. Let me know in the comments down below how you reflect on your team's opening weekend performance. Let's begin at Hillsborough as they thumped Plymouth by 4-0. I think it's only right we start with Sheffield Wednesday. Their XG was 4.59. I think the biggest thing we learnt is how little we know about football when it's coached by Danny Röhl. It was a phenomenal Sheffield Wednesday display, and there are so many details to discuss. So let's get straight into the thick of it. The slightly cautious dogfight style of last season when Danny Röhl came in, and a style that he had to implement, is well and truly a thing of the past. From the aggressive press out of possession to the detailed slick build-up with the ball, Danny Röhl didn't just school Wayne Rooney, but I think he schooled most of us. Define chance creating domination. This is the momentum graph from the game yesterday. It visualises so clearly the domination of Wednesday throughout and Plymouth's inability to gain a foothold in the match at all. As the bars from our trusty graph does suggest, we learnt so much about how Danny Röhl wants his side to threaten the opposition box throughout and absolutely pepper that goal. A clean sheet against Wednesday could be one of the biggest challenges a team faces this season. I know it's only one game, but we saw so much evidence to suggest the attacking output is going to be frightening. Look at the shot map. It only further emphasises just how much joy the home side had in Plymouth's box yesterday. They had 30 shots, 24 efforts from inside the area, and get this, 62 touches inside the opposition box. 62. Alongside that, they racked up 6 big chances, which is mouth-watering if you're a Sheffield Wednesday attacker. I mean, Jamal Lowe definitely profited from that, and Musaba had plenty of opportunities too. They're a threat. They're such a threat. Now, we could make an entire video on the tactical details behind Sheffield Wednesday's win, but quite frankly, we don't have the time. So I wanted to take this opportunity to speak about the unique influence of new man Svante Ingvarsson and the role that he adopted in this one. Now, many expected him to play as the slightly more aggressive, destroying pivot partner to Barry Bannon, but this just didn't happen. That's not the role he took on. His personal heat map does show his work in the centre of the pitch, but also highlights his tendency to drift down the right side. This Mazzala style provides a movement that adds yet another unpredictable nature to this Wednesday team, able to cover ground quickly and take advantage of any spaces the opposition may leave in their shape. And spoiler alert, Plymouth, they had plenty of space in their shape. Now, this screenshot captures Ingvarsson's role perfectly, and as we know, leads to him directly setting up the first goal. You can see Ingvarsson is operating on this right-hand side, which is very, very unique. You maybe expect him to be here, maybe here, sort of next to Barry Bannon as that traditional pivot partner. That's not Ingvarsson. That's not what he's about. That's not what Danny Röhl wants him to do and where he wants him to operate. He's found himself in between Plymouth's left centre-back and left-back. The both of them had a pretty terrible game, and he's got a really, really good space there. He's then got Barry Bannon, who is a pretty good passer, to find a pass into his feet there. He's moved forward. He's able then to whip across into the box. But it's about his positioning. He's found a position between those two players in that half space, in that pocket. He's collecting the ball well, and he's then looking to create a chance. Don't worry, we will revisit this screenshot in a moment, because a Plymouth point of view, it's terrible. It is some shambolic defending, but it shows, and this is again an example of how he's found himself into a brilliant place, and he's directly assisted a goal. Across the 90 minutes, Ingvarsson touched the ball 55 times, made 7 passes into the final third, and created 2 chances. It was unorthodox, it was fascinating, but it worked a treat, much like that entire Sheffield Wednesday display. Danny Röhl, I salute you. As for Plymouth, their XG was 0.23, but quite frankly, that's irrelevant. I mean, where to start? I think we need to ask a really broad question off the bat. What was the approach and where was the quality? I can't remember a team looking so disorganised with and without the ball in a very long time. From back to front, Plymouth players were baffled and blown away by the tactical details of their opposition. And when we talk about a schooling, this was a schooling from a coaching perspective, and I think from most perspectives, I've never seen a bunch of players look so confused about what other professional players are doing. It's quite frightening, and in the first game, it is one hell of a wake-up call. They couldn't react, and they certainly couldn't prevent. Their average position showed them stuck in a low block, with every player averaging a spot in their own half, with nobody advanced. The away side had no outlet or focal point in the attacking zones. It forced them deep throughout and overrun in every department. I mean, these are very, very basic questions. Do they press effectively? Do they soak up pressure deep and play in quick transitions? Do they persist in building up from the back when they very clearly do not have the personnel to do so? Like I said, these are very, very basic tactical questions. This is not detailed, groundbreaking, scientific stuff. This is some very, very basic points when you're putting together a game plan to beat an extremely, or get something, or just be competitive and don't embarrass yourself against a very well-coached Sheffield Wednesday team. But I think these are questions that Wayne Rooney couldn't answer before the game, during the game, and when watching his post-match interview, I don't think after the game either. Across the 90 minutes, Plymouth completed just 65 passes in the opposition half and only 8 touches inside the Wednesday box. For context, Sheffield Wednesday accumulated 145 passes and, as we said earlier, 62 touches. Now, I wanted to bring you back to this screenshot and highlight just how poorly organised this Plymouth team were. Now, we've seen this before, Barry Bannon passes to Ingleson, but let's just step back a moment and highlight just how much room Barry Bannon has. This is one of the most intelligent, technically gifted players in the division. He ran the game yesterday. Wayne Rooney mentioned after the game how the intention was to stop the source and stop Barry Bannon from influencing the game to this effect. Well, that was a terrible game plan. It was a good game plan, but terribly executed, I should say, if that even was what they mentioned before the game. With Wayne Rooney, I'm not quite sure. He's been given that much time. Now, we know where he does pass, but he can pass in so many different places, and that's the scary part. Who is picking up Ingleson? Who is picking up Josh Windass? Who is picking up the winger here, Musaba? Who is picking up these players? It's a scary thought. It's a scary thought. He has ultimately 3 different passes that could lead to a huge chance on goal, and as we know, the pass he does make does lead to a goal itself. There's 3 players that are just totally not being occupied. I think also as well, something that's really fascinating and quite disturbing is the body language. This here, nobody is looking. He's not looking at him. I don't quite know where they're looking. Do they know there's somebody here in Jamal Lowe that's behind them? He could come back on side and then make another run. That could give him a 4th pass he could make. Nobody's looking behind them. Maybe they have. That could be too harsh, but I can't trust this Plymouth team. You've got Ogbeta here, as we know, just not at left back. He has to be here in that position. Why he's up here, I'm not quite sure. You've got Forshaw here. He has to either go much tighter with Bannon, and somebody has to be on wing there. It looks like they're playing with less players, which is a really, really quite disturbing thought. And on top of all of that, and I said this after the game when I was speaking about it with someone else, this is at 0-0. This is 34 minutes into the game. This isn't when they're 3-0 down. It's the 85th minute or in injury time. And maybe there's no excuse for that at any point. But if there is going to be an excuse, it's going to be when the game is done. When there's not much time left. This is at 0-0 with 34 minutes played. This is at the point in the game where they should be most switched on. It's fair to say there's plenty of work to do at Plymouth for Wayne Rooney, and if that performance is anything to go by, things will only end one way, and that's relegation. It's the first weekend of the roundup, and I've said the word relegation, but it sounds so harsh, but that's what Wayne Rooney has forced me to say. Relegation. It's week 1. Nightmare. Oxford United 2, Norwich 0. I'm going to try and not smile for the next 5 minutes, but it's going to be very, very hard for me not to. Oxford, let's start with them. XG 0.91. Wow, what a return to the Championship. After 25 years away from the division, that is not just some result, but some performance as well. The biggest thing we learned about Des Buckingham's team on Saturday is the sheer intensity they want to play with, no matter the calibre of opposition. I think the word bravery is probably overused in football sometimes, but take a look at these Oxford United average positions, because that is the definition of bravery in your first game back in the Championship against a team that finished in the semi-finals of the playoffs last season. Buckingham is absolutely fine to leave Moore and Brown at the back, whilst actually creating an aggressive 2-4-4 shape That's right, not a 4-4-2, a 2-4-4. The home side racked up 6 high recoveries during the game, regaining possession of the ball in the opponent's first third of the pitch time and time again. Oxford forced Norwich to make one of two choices: trust their midfield to play through the press, or find joy in going direct and missing the middle part of the pitch altogether. Well, neither worked, because the Norwich team only completed 2 key passes in the game and had a long ball accuracy of just 36%. Now, the narrowness of Norwich's attack allowed Long and Bennett to roam forward on numerous occasions, only intensifying the press and creating a greater numerical advantage in the final third. Sam Long alone completed 12 passes into the final third, creating 2 chances, with of course one being the assist for Oxford's second goal of the game. What a cross to Cameron Brannigan. Now, it would be unfair to single out one Oxford United player, but I'm going to make an exception this time around, because this man deserves it. Brannigan, the boy, is a joke. And now he's finally being able to show his qualities on one of the biggest stages. Take a look at his personal heat map. With the addition of Will Vaulks, he's been given the license to do what he wants. Look at the ground that man covers. Now, these 2 screenshots visualize exactly what I'm talking about. His role allows him to start moves, but also get inside the box to finish them too. Within 17 seconds, Brannigan has collected the ball in the defensive third, carried possession to the other side of the pitch, distributed it out wide, and got himself in a position to finish the move he created just seconds before. The brilliant Will Vaulks can protect Oxford in transition and just allow Brannigan to do what he wants. Bravery is not a buzzword when it comes to Oxford United. It's an approach, and the approach that Des Buckingham conducts. As for Norwich, their XG was 0.83. I think we learned a lot from this Norwich team. I think the biggest, Grant Hanley and Shane Duffy cannot play at central defence together ever again. It was so naive from Johannes Hofthorp to think the pair could deal with the pace and the pressing intentions of Oxford United in this game. Norwich had to be quick and be aware of the very little time Oxford were going to give them on the ball, and quite brutally, they weren't. When you look at these average positions, Norwich wanted Callum Doyle to invert and play as a third centre-back in possession, while Jack Stacey could stay high to create an overload on the right side. But with less possession and fewer passes than their opposition, the plan just couldn't come together. The next thing we learned about Norwich City was their desperate need to improve in creativity, especially in that midfield. No Gabi Sara was evident, and the away side only made 15 passes into the final third out of a total of 402 accurate passes. Norwich missed the game with 0 big chances created and just 2 shots on target. A wake-up call for the new manager, but if you're going to be woken up, I guess the positive being it's the first game of the season. Preston 0, Sheffield United 2. The XG for Sheffield United, 0.95. Let's start with them. When reflecting on this United performance, we learnt this Blades team is different. It's a bit of fun. Now, the sheer gulf in quality between themselves and, it felt, every opposition they faced in the Premier League last season totally stopped them playing with any kind of fluidity or freedom. But in the opening game against Preston on Friday, it felt so refreshed. Sheffield United's desire to press and regain possession quickly was evident, and the pace in transition was a threat on so many occasions. The positioning of Andre Brooks stood out to me and reminded me of a tactical element I spotted last season when discussing Abu Kamara at Portsmouth, when focusing on the isolation of fast, direct, wide players. By making sure the other United players are away from Brooks, it forces Preston to shift the attention to those players and leave Preston exposed and outnumbered when the winger receives the ball quickly. Now, this screenshot is an example of exactly that, where only one Preston player is occupying the potential threat of Andre Brooks on this right-hand side. The idea is you've got players here, you've got Hamer, you've got O'Hare, you've got Kiefer Moore, you've got Arblaster, I guess, in that position too. You've got all of these players focusing on this bulk of players, but only one looking at Andre Brooks. And that is an intentional play from Chris Wilder and Sheffield United, because they know they can get the ball very, very quickly to Brooks and force a 1v1 situation here. We know who's going to be the favourite. Now, this screenshot is taken at 16 seconds later, which is scary and frighteningly quick. Poor Brad Potts has got himself into this pickle here, and I mean, just take a zoom in on that. That is not the stance you want to be defending in when you've got a player of Andre Brooks' technical ability coming at you. It is not a good position to be in, and that is because all of the attention was on these players and not Andre Brooks, who was left exposed with Brad Potts. I mean, it's an attacking detail that Sheffield United will be looking to try throughout the season. The question is, who can stop it and how do you stop it? Because, as we know, Andre Brooks, he fired this ball into the area. Lovely cutback it was. He pretty much got to the byline, and Kiefer Moore could have finished it. It's an attacking detail, one that I spotted last season, and I think was intentionally used to get Andre Brooks on the ball and get 1v1 direct time and time again. The second thing we learned about Sheffield United in this game is they could have one of the best double pivots in the division. It's a strong statement after just one game, but I'm going to run with it. Sousa and Arblaster ran the show from the middle, touched the ball a combined 159 times. That's 59 more touches than Preston's midfield 3 put together. When you look at their personal heat maps, the ground they cover is frightening and it allows their teammates to stay in attacking positions to cause a threat throughout. Sousa was involved in the most defensive actions with 13. He also won the most duels as well, whilst Oliver Arblaster completed the most interceptions and transitioned the ball, making the most key passes as well. Those two, they're very good. Watch out for them. They're a bit of a duo at the moment. As for Preston, they've just... Ryan Lowe's left. I didn't mention it. It's literally just popped up as I'm recording this. I could talk about the shape. I could talk about them being pretty careless with the ball, but I feel as though a manager leaving, it says by mutual consent. Depends what that means. Depends how you look at that. After one game, it's pretty damning. Pretty damning. It was a bad Preston North End showing. They were outclassed a lot of the time. They looked very disorganised. They didn't look after the ball very well. They got picked off far too easily. One game, is that a record to lose your manager or to sack your manager? It's not good. Preston, lots to learn, but I think firstly, getting a new manager, that's what they need to do. It could be one of the best games we see all season, and it's happened in the opening weekend. That's the Championship. Leeds 3, Portsmouth 3. Let's start with Leeds United, the home side. The XG 3.39. I think we all know the biggest thing we learnt about Leeds in this one. The XG might have given it away. They have to improve their finishing, especially when they concede 3 goals in one game. It felt like the same problems for Daniel Farke in this one. All the talent, but below par execution. Just take a look at the shot map in front of you. Leeds had 22 shots, 10 on target, hit the woodwork 3 times, and created 6 big chances. They even scored 3 goals. But if they're going to play with that level of expansion and defend so poorly at times, they need to take more chances. All 4 of these screenshots you can see now are positions that Leeds failed to convert from, which is frightening. And we say they could have scored 7 or 8. They actually did have the chances to score 7 or 8. And that's where they went wrong. And like I said, if you're going to defend poorly at times, you can't miss chances. They might have created 6 big chances, but they actually missed 5 of them. Some of the most straightforward efforts were either saved or missed altogether, or they hit the woodwork. A shot to goals conversion rate of 15% isn't dramatically low, but if your opposition is scoring 75% of their shots in the final third, it gets pretty unforgiving. Having said all of that, Leeds should find positives from this game. The domination was relentless and the chance creation should be enough to blow teams away. Take a look at the graph in front of you. It's a healthy graph and visualises the constant threat that Leeds put on Portsmouth. It's only one game. I understand the frustration and perhaps the deja vu of last season, but the creation is there. It's the improvement in both boxes that needs addressing. Some Leeds fans will say Daniel Farke isn't the man to provide and address those improvements, but he's starting the season. He has kept his job after that semi-final defeat. The control is there, the domination is there, but as we know, possession and passes don't win you games of football. They did score 3 goals though, which again you can throw in so many different directions. Second balls as well, Leeds. Second balls, I've just remembered. Please, it is so clear that their failure to clear their lines will continue to cost them goals. It's something I had to say. You get taught it under 10s. Clear your lines and get hold of your second balls. Because Joe Rodon's header for the second one, I think it's Ampadu's header for the first one, they're in no man's land. And if you're going to defensively head it away, that's fine. But make sure there's somebody there as a teammate to pick up a second ball, because Pompey latched onto both of those and converted from both of those. It's just grinding my gears, and I'm not a Leeds fan. As for Pompey, their XG was 0.8. When it comes to what we learnt, the biggest thing was that their character and spirit of last season's title-winning team is still well and truly there. The ability to sit tight, create their own luck, and be so good in the split-second moments. If you ever watched a team so good in moments, They had 3 moments in their favour during this game. Sorensen's chance, Lang's volley and a late penalty. They converted and took advantage of all 3. Look at the shot map again. The away side converted 3 of their 4 shots on target, with a third of Pompey's touches inside the box leading to goals. You can spin it both ways. From a Pompey perspective, that has to go down as one of the most clinical displays we've seen for a very, very long time. Of course, from a Leeds perspective, it's very, very poor defending. You should not be conceding when the opposition is having such less influence on the box. The second thing we learned is Pompey can earn something without control, a trait we only saw a few times last season, and definitely not against the quality like Leeds United. The position of Paddy Lane was much deeper, so they could double up on Willy Gnonto on the left side. But the congested midfield also showed Pompey could take advantage of any errors Leeds would make in transition. It's also important to highlight Pompey's backline could have been so much lower. When you look at the average positions, they kept a fairly high line. Their team was around the middle of the pitch. They could have got really, really deep and camped on the edge of their own box, and that would have only benefited Leeds more. I think, truthfully, Pompey fans didn't really expect to get a thing from this game, but their grit, determination and bravery, again, buzzwords, but with this Pompey team, if you know Pompey, those are not buzzwords. They are things you associate with this team, managed by John Mousinho every single time. We said it every week last week. The squad needs work, it does need investment, but the evidence was there, and everybody saw it on Saturday at Ellen Road.